I'm a single guy in my early 30s, and my self-entitled family recently tried to strong-arm me into giving up my 3-bedroom house for my brother's family of 6, just because I don't have kids. My younger brother, aged 29, is a father of 4. He had his first child at 22, the second a year later, the third 2 years after that, and the fourth just a few months ago. His wife, my sister-in-law, and I clash constantly. She loves to provoke me, acting as if she's above me, then flips into a melodramatic victim mode if I respond. She can cry on cue, putting on a performance so convincing it sways almost anyone. My parents and brother are smitten with her, fully aware of her manipulative ways but unbothered by them. She's undeniably attractive, but her personality is so toxic I could never be charmed by her. She also refuses to get a job despite holding a college degree, leaving my brother as the sole breadwinner. My mother happily spends her days helping with their kids. They all live together in my parents' cramped 3-bedroom house from the 1960s, where space and privacy are serious issues. Growing up, my brother was the obvious favorite. Despite being 3 years younger, he developed an inflated sense of superiority because I faced harsh consequences if I ever stood up to his antics. My parents clearly favored him, giving him the best of everything unless relatives called them out. This happened often, which led my parents to relocate us 150 miles away from extended family, limiting their visits to holidays due to the 3-hour drive. My brother was physically aggressive toward me multiple times, flirted shamelessly with my first girlfriend until she dumped me, and mocked every misfortune I faced. When I was upset, my parents told me to toughen up. I only got fair treatment when they needed to keep up appearances in front of others. It was almost comical watching their expressions when they had to treat me equally during birthdays or Christmas because relatives were watching. Our nosy extended family loved gossip, so my parents worked hard to hide their favoritism, threatening to take away my possessions if I spoke out. They were thrilled when I turned 18 and moved out, as it meant they no longer had to care for me. I wasn't even done with high school when I left, but couch surfing was better than staying with them. After leaving, I kept contact with only a few people. My parents didn't even show up to my high school graduation, but I was past caring. From then on, I only saw them and my brother during holidays, like the rest of the family. The 2020 pandemic hit me hard. I lost my job, and my roommate did too, so we couldn't renew the lease on our 2-bedroom condo, which I loved. When the lease ended, my roommate moved in with his family, and I had to sell most of my belongings to downsize drastically. I'd been living extravagantly and should have chosen a cheaper place to save more, but hindsight is 20/20ths. I owned a truck, always a passion of mine, so I bought a $1,000 camper in decent shape and mounted it on the truck to live in temporarily. That temporary stretched far longer than planned. I asked my parents if I could park the camper at their place, where my brother and his family also lived, but they refused, citing a full house and our strained relationship. They offered to let me park there only if I paid rent equivalent to an apartment in my area, way too much for an unemployed guy trying to stretch his unemployment checks. They called my camper an eyesore and told me to hit the road when we couldn't agree. My sister-in-law found my situation hilarious, and my brother joined her, mocking me as a homeless loser. The first night, with nowhere to go, I parked in a store lot, terrified someone might break in. Sleep was scarce. I didn't want to leave the area I knew, and I had my mail forwarded to a friend's place. Finding safe parking spots was a nightmare. I dealt with everything from panhandlers to people demanding I move my ugly camper. One guy claimed he was from an HOA, even though I wasn't parked near homes. When I questioned him, he got hostile, so I moved to avoid trouble. To keep my camper's batteries charged, I'd sneakily plug an extension cord into random outdoor outlets. It wasn't ethical, but I needed power for my fridge. A small solar charger kept my phone alive, but I couldn't afford a noisy, fuel-guzzling generator. After months of this nomadic life, I landed a job in a nearby city, avoiding retail work, which I'd sworn off after college. I was still on unemployment but didn't want to be jobless when it ran out. Plus, I was bored out of my mind, limited to reading, watching DVDs on a portable player, using my phone or laptop, and scouting parking spots or public restrooms. I envied places like Japan with their public bathhouses. We could use those here. At my new job, I parked my camper in the back lot of the warehouse, a forgotten area nobody used. My boss, the company owner, was fine with it since I worked any shift available. He even let me detach the camper and park it there so I could drive my truck freely. I'm not sure if it was legal, but no one bothered us. I dealt with a few trespassers, but security handled them. I plugged my camper into the building for power and water, paying a small rent by working free Sundays when only the janitor and security were around. I showered at a friend's place or the gym since the camper had no shower, just a portable toilet I avoided using due to the hassle of emptying it. I had a warehouse key for bathroom access and became close with the night security guard, now one of my best friends. Winters were easy with a small heater, but summers were brutal, so I bought a used portable AC unit. With overtime and new skills learned from coworkers, I eventually got promoted to supervisor with a better salary than my old job. That's when I decided to buy a home for stability after the condo loss scared me. I found a 3-bedroom manufactured home on a small lot 2 miles from work, snagging it for $10,000 less than asking price. I used nearly all my savings for the down payment and got a mortgage. I parked my truck behind the house, set up the camper in the backyard as a backup, and settled in. Foolishly, I posted about my new home on social media. My family saw the post, and that's where the trouble began. A few weeks later, my parents, brother, and his family showed up unannounced for a tour. I never gave them my address, so I suspect they followed me from work. They barged in like they owned the place, poking around while my sister-in-law flashed a smug grin that later made my blood boil. My parents kept commenting on how much space I had, too much for a single guy with no kids. My brother noted my house was bigger than our parents and closer to his job.
Red flags everywhere.
In a private talk, my brother, let's call him Jake, said my house was too big for me and I should let his family move in since his wife was pregnant again and my place was convenient for his job. He suggested I live in the camper outside while they took the house, setting rules like curfews and restricting my access. He didn't mention rent, despite his decent job. I tried to speak, but he talked over me like my opinion didn't matter. I wasn't renting to him or his wife, period. I'd seen stories like this online, but never thought I'd live one. My family fit the entitled, narcissistic stereotype perfectly. I grabbed my phone, started recording, and held it as Jake rambled about why he deserved my house, acting like it was already his. When he reached to shake my hand, I shouted, "No way," loud enough to startle him. I stood my ground, saying I bought the house for myself, not to support his growing family or their inability to afford their own place. Jake got in my face, claiming I didn't deserve the house and his family needed it more. I laughed, calling it nonsense. I'd earned it. He argued I didn't need the space without a wife or kids and should give it to him. I pointed out he never offered rent, meaning I'd pay the mortgage while barred from my own home. He claimed his family's needs trumped rent, saying our parents promised I'd agree. I told him they had no authority over my house. My parents and sister-in-law stormed back in, surrounding me to pressure me. They kept saying, "Do it for Jake," over and over. I stood firm, telling them they had no control over my life or property and to leave or I'd call the police. My sister-in-law screamed that I couldn't do this to her, pregnant again. I snapped that I owed her nothing, called her entitled, and said I had no sympathy for her or her kids. That set her off. She slapped me and tried to do more, but Jake pulled her back as she screamed about scratching my eyes out. I held up my phone, showing I'd recorded everything, and threatened to press assault charges if they didn't leave. My parents dragged Jake out, and my mom gave me a week to come to my senses. I told her I wouldn't and to stay away. My sister-in-law stormed out, screaming, while my mom repeated I should do it for Jake. I refused. Update 1. I know this story sounds wild and lengthy, and some might doubt it because similar posts exist online. But this kind of nonsense isn't exclusive to one person. If anything, I'm shocked more people don't use platforms like this to expose entitled behavior. I don't blame skeptics, I'd be skeptical too. But my parents are the root of this mess, spoiling my brother into the entitled person he is today without ever explaining why. I suspect there's no real reason. Some parents just pick favorites and double down. After kicking them out for trying to take my house, I went straight to social media to share the story with our family, knowing they'd try to paint me as the villain. I had a head start and video proof to back me up. No, I won't share it here. It worked. Most of the family supported me, already familiar with my parents' and brother's entitlement. When the cops arrived, Jake and his family had locked themselves inside my house. I showed my driver's license proving my address and pointed out the drilled-out lock and drill they left on the porch, clear evidence of a break-in. My parents showed up, lying that I'd agreed to rent to Jake. But Jake and his wife produced a fake rental agreement with a forged signature that didn't even resemble mine. I called it obvious fraud, warning that pursuing it could cost Jake his job and land them in legal trouble. I also mentioned my video of the assault and threatened to involve CPS if anything of mine was damaged. My mom still begged me to do it for Jake and live in the camper. I told her to give Jake her house if she cared so much. The cops separated us, and I demanded they leave or face charges for breaking in, forgery, and assault. My sister-in-law tore up the fake agreement, scattering it like confetti until a cop threatened a littering fine. Jake's kids cried, and the family staged a rehearsed sad hug to guilt me. I wasn't moved. Jake yelled that I was selfish for denying them a home. I laughed, saying he was trying to steal, not share, and I no longer saw him as my brother, just an entitled bully. The cops warned him to stop cursing or face arrest. I made Jake hand over the new lock's keys, but he threw them into a storm drain, forcing a cop to make him retrieve them. He slammed them into my hand, furious. My mom threatened to disown me, and I sarcastically said I'd miss their awful holiday gatherings where I was always treated like garbage. I laid into them for their favoritism, especially for charging me rent to park my camper when I was homeless while now demanding I give Jake my house for free. In front of the cops, I asked what I'd done to deserve their treatment. They had no answer, just stood there, humiliated. My mom admitted she was a terrible person, and I agreed. They packed up and left, my sister-in-law throwing a tantrum on my lawn. I posted the whole ordeal online, and the family overwhelmingly supported me. My parents' do it for Jake excuse fell flat, and they lost most of their familial support. I hosted Christmas Eve for half the family, excluding my parents, Jake, and his wife. I noticed my sister-in-law's passive-aggressive posts about living with my parents after their fourth child was born in November. I'm sure it's chaos there with 4 kids, a newborn, and her drama. Maybe my parents should move into a camper and give Jake their house. They could do it for Jake. Update 2. I planned to keep this to 2 parts, but it got too long, so here's part 3. To those suggesting cameras, I'll get them when I can afford them. I'm still recovering from buying the house. Doorbell cameras are my priority, but good systems need a decent computer, and I only have a 3-year-old Windows 10 laptop. To those saying I should have pressed charges, I didn't because Jake's kids need their parents. If he lost his job, they'd be screwed, especially with a newborn. But I got my revenge without jail time, and they know I won't be so lenient again. I held off posting until after the new year in case more happened, and it did. My sister-in-law kept making passive-aggressive posts about me, especially after her November delivery, complaining about cramped living with my parents. She just rephrased the same gripes, clearly trying to guilt me. But I'm done with their games.